Hi, I'm going to be talking about how to destroy the ASVAB or any other standardized test. You might hate standardized tests. I used to. But most likely you're going to be taking a lot of them, and the reality is the right strategies can turn these tests, which are most usually stressful and anxious, into really a fulfilling challenge. So, how can you do that? First step is target what you actually need to know. So you might be tempted to just jump right into studying or getting overwhelmed with where to begin. But really, the first thing you need to hone in on is what you need to know, what you need to know. So, for example, on the ASVAB, if you're trying to become a marine science tech, which I was interested in doing, the only two sections you need to really be concerned about are the VE and the AR, which AR is arithmetic reasoning, and you need a 115 on that. And your overall score on the ASVAB is determined by only the math and English sections. So if you're interested in that job, what you need to look for is those sections. You need to at least get the minimum. So the easiest way to see where you stand on that is take a timed practice test. It might seem obvious, but uh, it's going to actually save you time. I think a lot of people just want to skip right into the studying, but it's going to actually save you a lot of time in the long term. So, on a practice test, it doesn't necessarily have to be even the full number of questions as the real test. The idea is just to get a sampling of where you're starting at. And so if you take it and you don't feel like you did as well as you would, don't freak out. Just be strategic about where you're going to put your effort. And also, one thing I'd add is don't take only one practice test from one website. Usually, you need more than one sampling to get a realistic idea of where you're at. Okay, next step is you want to identify and collect test prep materials. Again, this might seem intuitive, but if you do this systematically, it's going to save you a lot of time. So, one of the best secrets I found out about the ASVAB is there's an app for it. There's an app for that. So search for apps for your test. The one for the ASVAB is by Coco eLearning. You can download it in the App Store. And then other websites that can help you review. One I like is Quizlet, but there are tons, just depends on your test. But before you spend too much money on signing up for a website, one thing that I always like to do is check a local library and see if there are any test prep books. A lot of times there are, and you can get it for free, and you're not going to need to own it, so you don't need it that long anyway, and usually they're actually pretty up to date. So that's another secret I like to use. And again, just make sure you don't limit yourself to one source of information. Usually prep books, prep companies are particularly good at one style, but they don't necessarily cover everything on the test itself. So if you can get your info from more than one source, you're going to have a better idea or a more realistic view of what's actually going to be on the test. So next, once you're actually digging into the material a little bit, before you dig into the material a little bit, you need to look at why did you miss the questions on your practice test that you did? Maybe you don't actually need to go into the material, but maybe it was just you missed the questions because you misread them. Maybe you didn't think about them the right way, or maybe there's just one underlying concept that's causing you to miss a bunch of the same types of questions. So look carefully at what types of questions you're missing. One If it's math questions, one strategy, one suggestion that I have found to be helpful is plug in the answers. They usually have 4 options. Plug one of them back into your question rather than trying to just plow through and solve it just the way it's written. And for English strategies, I'll talk about this a little bit more, but word roots, if you can get one root, it can help you get a lot of different words, so prefixes and suffixes. And then for science strategies, if you can get a couple of good mnemonics, usually it'll cover a lot of info and be asked about in various different ways. So just try and focus and be strategic about which are the actual questions you're missing and what is the key information that's going to help you be able to get that. So yeah, along those same lines, you're using the gather materials not to go through the entire book front to back or through the entire app, but just focusing in on what you need. And you're using those mnemonics or prefixes that work for you. So for example, in science, a couple of mnemonics that work for me, if you're taking the general science test on the ASVAB, these are tested. How living things, organisms are grouped. It starts in the broadest group and down to the smallest. A good mnemonic is that I use is kings play chess on fine green sand, which stands for kingdom, phylum, class, order, genus, species. So an easy way to remember that one. Same thing with the planets. If you can't remember the planets, which was a little bit new to me, one that I like to use is my very educated. Okay, my very educated mother just served us nachos. So Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Way to remember the planet order. And then the last strategy or the last point there that has been a real secret that has helped me a lot is constructing your own practice test. So rather than making a test review sheet, which I think a lot of people do, is actually write questions and answers for the main topics that you're going to be going through. So it takes a lot more effort, and it takes the highest level of using new information or internalizing new information is to apply it and to use it. And when you construct your own practice test, you're doing that. So you're forcing yourself to use the information in a way that's going to stay in your mind. And then there are also a few other benefits in that you get into the mind of the test maker. So you're starting to think like they think, and you might come up with questions that they might come up with, but you're also kind of playing that game of wits where you're starting to get into their head a little bit, and you can start to think like they do, which sets you really far ahead in being able to answer the questions. So finally, go back to those scores that you wanted to get and check yourself again, see if you were able to get that score after learning some of the new material. And if you haven't, so take the test, see if you did. If you did, great. As long as you're slightly above where you want, you should be fine for test day. Just like I said, make sure you're not using everything from the same source. And then if you didn't, retest and review those, look at the questions you missed and review those specific topics. So you just keep doing that until you're at the place where you need to be. And then one final thing I would add is do not retest or stress out about the scores on the day before the test. The day before the test, you should be you should be relaxing and not stressing yourself out, or else you're going to be too tired mentally for the actual test. So usually the day or the night before, I like to do some exercise, do something physical or active so that you get a good night's rest and can perform at your best for the test. So you can do that. I know if you, as long as you put these suggestions into practice, I know you can improve your score. Anybody can improve their score on ASVAB or any other standardized tests. So good luck and you can do it. Thanks.